Gentlemen, let me begin with a question that will haunt you in case you answer it incorrectly. And the question is this: whose voice governs your life? Is it the voice of your mission, or is it the whispers of your woman? There was one time that a young man I was having a discussion with told me that an older gentleman advised him, never listen to your wife if you want to have peace in your marriage. So at first, this sounds outrageous, sounds even offensive. But the real question is this: what that old man was speaking, was it folly, or was he speaking an ancient wisdom that men have forgotten in this modern age? So to answer this question, let us travel back thousands of years ago, okay, to the world of Homer. Those of you know Homer. Homer was a Greek poet who wrote several epics. And one of the epics that he wrote was called the Odyssey. In the Odyssey, we had some women. They are mythical creatures, of course. There were women who are called sirens. The sirens were not warriors or monsters in the physical sense. They were something much more dangerous. Their weapon was their voice. So they sang promises of secret knowledge and pleasure, calling each sailor in words that felt personal and irresistible. Their songs were lures, beautiful, very erotic songs that filled men with longing, and the songs were also very intellectual. The ships that followed their sound always crashed upon the rocks. So any men or any sailors that listened to these sirens, they never came back. So Odysseus, who was a Greek hero in this epic, he was sailing home from Troy, and he was warned of their trap by an oracle. So what did Odyssey do? He acted wisely. The first thing Odyssey did is that he plugged the ears of his crew, okay, with beeswax. So he made sure that they could not hear anything. He plugged their ears with beeswax. The second thing he did is that he tied himself to the mast of that ship so that he could hear, but he could not obey, or he could not act on his desires or his feelings. Okay? He wanted to be the only one to hear. So when they traveled and they approached the sirens started singing, and he was filled with so much longing, and he wanted to be released. But as the song overtook him, his men, who were loyal to his orders, they bound him even tighter so that he could not move to the sirens. And therefore, Odysseus survived. He survived because he acknowledged his weakness and built structures to resist temptation. He knew discipline and foresight, not willpower alone, are what save a man from destruction. The sirens in this case, they are not just myth. They are a metaphorical truth. They symbolize the timeless dangers of seduction, destruction, and surrendering sovereignty. So back to the advice that the old man gave this young man. Remember, the older gentleman told this man, if you want to have a peaceful marriage, never listen to your wife. So we go to modern psychology. There's Hazan and Sheva, who wrote a book that show that women's communication often arises from attachment needs. They are rooted in emotion, not rational consistency. In other words, women communicate to convey context, while men communicate to convey content. So this asymmetry normally creates a trap for us men. When men listen to their wives as they will listen to another man, they end up taking emotional outbursts as literal truths. There's a neuroscientist called Luan Brizedin who wrote a book called The Female Brain. And Luan found that women use nearly 3 times as many words per day as men. And women do this often as a way to regulate their feelings. What that means is this: when you listen to her as if she were a man, you confuse emotions with the facts. Compliments, criticisms, sudden requests, these are often emotional releases, not eternal truths. And in the scripture, Genesis 3:17 reminds us of Adam's fall. In Genesis 3:16, when God is spelling his punishment to Adam, the first words are, "Because you listened to your wife." Adam's error was not hearing Eve, but abdicating leadership. By surrendering his role, he ceded sovereignty. And history and myth echo the same lesson. If you look at the story of Samson and Delilah, Samson was the strongest man, one of the strongest men to be undone. And he was not undone by the Philistines. He was undone by listening to Delilah's manipulations. He fell because he listened to Delilah's manipulative pleas. His downfall was not the Philistines. It was his inability to guard his ear. There was also Henry VIII, who fell in love with a woman called Anne Boleyn. This is a king who let whispers rule his crown, and he nearly collapsed his kingdom. Henry VIII's pursuit of Anne Boleyn sparked one of the most significant and political and religious upheavals in European history. To marry her, he defied the Pope. He severed England from the Catholic Church and created the Church of England. Okay? This is a move that destabilized alliances and set off decades of conflict. Henry VIII didn't just fall in love with Anne. He let her influence the shape the shape of his decisions in ways that were almost unheard of for a Tudor king. This is how he listened to Anne. The first thing Anne did, Anne refused to be a mistress to this guy. He said he must divorce his wife and marry her. He will not settle for being Henry's lover like other court women. This forced Henry to pursue marriage, setting the stage for the breakup with Rome. Okay? He was already married, so the Pope refused to tie the wedlock between him and Anne. And Anne also fed his ambition. She encouraged Henry's belief that he deserved a legitimate heir and that God supported his annulment from Catherine of Aragon. She also gained a voice in the court and influenced appointments and policy decisions, backing religious reformers like Thomas Cranmer and promoting Protestant-leaning ideas. She also challenged Henry's authority, okay? Although she did it carefully. She was bold enough to argue with him, something that very few could do and very few could dare. This kept Henry fascinated, and he often persuaded him to act in her favor, at least until her fall from grace. She became a symbol of change. And she was not just a queen, but she was the face of Henry's defiance against the Pope. Every decision Henry made to keep her, like divorcing Catherine, dissolving monasteries, and risking war, was in part because he listens to Anne's refusal to back down. And we've already talked about Odysseus and the sirens. He heard, but he did not obey. That distinction saved him. Gentlemen, if you're enjoying this video, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it. When you subscribe, you'll always be notified when I drop new content. Also, when you like and share, you help this channel to grow, and more importantly, you help other men to discover the tools that they need to level up. So remember, when one man rises, we all rise. Now let's get back to the video. So, gentlemen, history, myth, and scripture converge, and they tell us when men surrender leadership to female influence, kingdoms fall, empires crumble, and respect evaporates. In Rational Male, Relate Mercy tells us that we must follow and be our own mental point of origin. If your decisions come from her feelings, you have lost frame. If they come from your mission, she will follow, even if she resists in the moment. In the book, Is There Anything Good About Men by Roe Bymester, he tells us that men evolved to be leaders and risk takers because survival depended on decisiveness. Abandon that, and she will fill the vacuum. But when she does, her respect dies, and with it, her desire. So you should not always listen. And there are three things that you should need to be careful about that you should not listen to when it comes from a woman. The first thing is compliments. Compliments will inflate pride in one moment, but set you up for devastation in the next. So when she tells you, for example, you're the best man I've ever known, she's not documenting history. She's expressing a feeling. Okay? If you let your pride get inflated, her words now have the power to deflate you when her anger strikes. The second thing you should not listen to are insults. Words of anger are not facts. Take them literally, and you may spiral into rage. When she shouts at you, you are a useless man in the heat of conflict, it is not a fact. It is an emotion. If you internalize it, you may spiral into rage and even violence. The third thing, you should not listen to are shit tests. So requests to shave your beard, for example, change your style, or drop friends. They are not preferences. They are tests of your sovereignty, of your frame. You fail, and you step into a frame. When she tells you to shave your beard, stop wearing loafers, or quit hanging out with your friends, often it's not about style. It's a competency test. So she's probing, is this man solid in his convictions, or can I sway him? Fail, and you slide into a frame. So this is just operant conditioning, which you learned from the behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner. Women unconsciously reward pliability with temporary peace and punish male sovereignty with conflict. But if you capitulate, you teach her you can be controlled. And once she perceives control, her respect and her attraction erodes. So, gentlemen, what can you do to maintain your sovereignty? First thing you must do is to be your own frame. Make yourself your own mental point of origin. Hear her, but filter everything through your mission and values. The second thing is you need to differentiate emotion from fact. Recognize that her words often reflect her state, not objective reality. The third thing you need to do is to don't supplicate with apologies. Okay? Correct your mistakes if you made a mistake. Do it silently. Never grovel for her forgiveness. Respect is preserved in strength, not supplication. When you apologize to a woman, she does not recognize that as an expression of remorse. She recognizes it as an expression of submission and inferiority. So correct your mistakes. Your mistakes are your business. The fourth thing you have to do is you pass the competency tests. If you want the beard, keep it. Your conviction is more important and more attractive than your compliance. Fifth thing, you need to guard against manipulation. Recognize guilt trips, gaslighting, and emotional outbursts for what they are, tests of your sovereignty. The sixth thing you have to do is to lead in decisions. Be very decisive. When it comes to finances, direction, lifestyle, hear her input, but decide as the captain. A ship cannot have two captains. So, gentlemen, from the stories you've seen, Samson and Delilah, Odysseus, and King Henry VII, Henry VIII, Heroes fell and dynasties collapsed because men listened when they should have led. The story of Adam and Eve, very good example. The question for you is simple, yet terrifying. Will you anchor your life on our emotions or on your mission? I challenge you. Share your experiences in the comments below. When did you lose sovereignty by listening too closely? There's a gentleman recently who told me that they wanted to buy a piece of land, and he asked the wife for her opinion. And the wife gave her opinion, and he ended up buying the piece of land where she proposed. But it turned out to be a very bad location. And now, this guy was telling her at some point when they are expressing their frustration, by the way, this was your idea. And the woman turned on him and told him, but you're the man. You should have made the decision. Why did you ask me? You're supposed to be the leader. Okay? When did you lose your sovereignty, gentlemen, by listening too closely to your woman? And when did standing firm preserve your respect and a desire? So tell us in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next one. Gentlemen, mark your calendars. On Saturday, 4th of October, 2025, we're going to meet at Ololtepe's picnic site in Kiserian. So we're going to be meeting from 4 p.m. Till late, and it's going to be more than just nyama choma. This is going to be about brotherhood, it's about networking, and also having deep conversations with fellow unplugged professionals. So if you've been looking for a space where unplugged men gather together to exchange wisdom, to sharpen each other for the journey ahead, then this is it. So I'm inviting you formally. Come hungry, come ready to network, and come ready to level up. So register on as per the instructions on the flyer on this particular video. And your registration matters because it secures your seat in this particular gathering and it keeps the circle strong. So see you on the Nyama Fest on 4th of October 2025.